Hello and welcome to the session. Now let's continue the hands-on part in this session. So we in the earlier session we understood build lifecycle phases, lifecycle goals and plugins and little discussion theoretical part. And we also kind of went through this the typical structure of the pom.xml file, and of course we will see in detail in the hands-on section. Um, right, so we also understand where to find what, so the folder structure typically. And right now let us explore the popular uh, build lifecycle phases. So we have compile, test, package, clean and deploy. So let us say compile the source code of the project. So very simple. When you run this, when you use this compile phase, it will compile the source code. So I have this simple project here, and if you see there is only Java files are here. So this is a Java file. If you see, this is a Java file. So I need to compile this project entirely, right? So what is the command I should use? So build life cycle phases. So I will use this command called as Mvn Clean Compile. So let us see this validate first. Mvn Clean Validate. So I've opened a terminal here. Just click on this terminal. This is as good as your command prompt, but this is a facility in IntelliJ. So that is why I'm using IntelliJ instead of Eclipse. And paste this command. Mvn Clean Validate. So Mvn Clean Validate is a basic phase. It will just validate that whether the structure is correct and there's no issue in the folder structure or any other dependency. Just an overall part. Now let's see here. So what has happened here? So building this project, and it has run this particular Mvn Clean plugin, and it has cleaned it. So default clean, and nothing much has happened here. Now let us see the next one called as Mvn Clean Compile. So I'm using another project here, which is this project case2 and e-commerce, which is the same project which we have created earlier. I just copied the same folder in the case2 folder. Now I'm opening a terminal here and paste this command, Mvn Clean Compile. So let us run this. Before that, let us understand Mvn Clean Compile. So I have this folder where the project is existing. One thing what I've done is I need to add the JUnit correct dependency and Surefire plugin. So what is this JUnit dependency and what is this Surefire plugin, and basically what is the dependency? Whenever you create a project, by default this will be your pom.xml file, and by default there will be something called as a dependencies section. So dependencies section is where you can specify the dependency of the external jar files. So remember in our the very earlier session, we had a project which has a lot of other external file dependency, for example JUnit or pom.xml or selenium or uh, Excel handling, Apache PUI, and so on. So if you specify the dependency here, and when you run this Maven project, when you execute a command, right? When you execute any of the command, then what will happen is this Maven will actually download the dependencies, basically the jar files from a Maven repository uh, website. So that a Maven repository website is basically something which holds all the jar files for all the different projects across universe. And what will happen, this Maven command will actually contact that website and it will download the jar files, the dependencies. Now you see that the dependencies jar file dependencies issue is resolved in a better way. How it is like that it will always download from a central repository, from that even repository.com website. So that way it will not download it from any of your local system or or not from your colleague system. It will always download from a centralized system. So that there is a very less chance that that is corrupted, and there's a very less chance that it might get it might be copied into some other folder and other things. So Maven will actually download those dependencies file, and it will keep it in a folder called as .m2 folder. Now this is the .m2 folder. If you see here, right? So for example, this is your user, this is your system, Windows system. So it will be copied in your C user and the username and .m2 folder and repositories. So inside the repositories, it will download all the individual jar files and that will be ready for use. So if now you have any number of Maven projects on your system, it will be as it is. It will, so the repositories will be common for all the projects. All right, so by default, this will be the case that you will have a dependency. So this section is basically your header part up to this, some XML version and all other housekeeping information. Then we have used this group ID, artifact ID when we created a project. Now packaging. So this is where, so ultimately when your project is created and when it will be uh, given to other people, it will be packaged in a jar file format, right? Now you will have, this is a version of the jar file which is a fairly constant value. Then this is the name is almost same as your artifact ID. This is the URL of the Maven uh, Maven tool, and this is where the dependency section and other sections like profiles, uh, plugins, so that is all will come under this. Right, so now we have compiled the let's see the compile part now. So yeah, we need to add this dependency and Surefire plugin. So what is a Surefire plugin? So we will see that here, right? So Maven Surefire plugin. So if you see here, once you complete your project and once you want to run a particular unit test or any other tests from this test section, then this Surefire plugin is used. So as the name suggests, it is for compiling the project, right, and running the unit test. So there are latest versions here. This plugin is provided by Maven itself, Maven plugins, and this is the latest version, almost the latest version. But it is up to your business requirement. You can update or go for the older or newer version than this, right? So this includes, and this thing we will see in a bit. For now, our goal is to run the automation, run the Mvn Clean Compile command. So when I run this compile command, it will basically see that if there are any Java files earlier which are created, the compiled source code, it will clear it. Okay, it will clean it. So changes detected, recompiling the module and files. Okay, this is fine. Yeah, so it has compiled, it has cleaned the project, right? If you see default clean, default resources, default compile. Okay, now one point to notice here is yeah, so this target folder. So we have, remember we have seen in the earlier slides where to find which files and which particular entities. Now if you see here, this is the one I'm talking about, the source code, resources and compiled classes. So this is where you will find all the compiled classes in the target folder. So target folder was not there earlier, but now it is freshly created because I have compiled the code. Now this is your Java file, and when you compile the Java file, it will become a .class file. So that is what has happened here. It has compiled the class file. Now if you see here, it has created a class file for this app.java. So app.java is converted into app.class, but there is no app test.java. Okay, why it is so? Because we want to compile only the the original Java code, the development Java code, which is in the main folder. The one which is in the test folder is basically unit test related items, and we don't want that to be compiled every time. Why? Because we don't want to run the unit test all the time. So that is why test, whatever is in the test folder, that was not compiled. There's a specific other command also, we'll see that later, wherein it will compile both the things, right? Now this is some list of files where it will have all the Java uh, classes names and their folder structure, but that is fine. So for now we have this target folder and we have the development Java code which is in the main folder. It is compiled, right? So this is about compiling a Java source code. Remember, we have used the fairly latest version of JUnit, but it is up to you. You can use the topmost latest version or any other version as per your business requirement. Right, so now we, yeah, Mvn Clean Compile. Now let us see. So verify if the target folder is created and all the class files are present in the same. Right. So now we'll see Mvn Clean test phase. So test phase, test the compiled source code using a suitable unit testing framework. This test should not require the code be packaged or deployed. Right. So test. So it is mainly for the unit test, and it using a suitable unit testing framework. So we have so other unit testing framework, for example, JUnit, the TestNG, or there are advanced frameworks like data driven or keyword driven or behavior driven. So test phase, okay, and this test should not require the code to be packaged or deployed. Right, so there's no advantage in using the test code into a jar file and giving it to other people, because nobody wants to run the tests all the time. They want the actual source code. So this test phase here, so mvn clean test, so I'm using the other case 3 folder. It is the same as earlier. JUnit dependency I've added, surefire plugin I've added. Now we will have to check the target folder once again, and I'll just added some unit test case, so that we want to know whether it is getting executed. Now remember, in earlier compile there was no prints on the console like this test, so we will see these prints when we use this mvn clean test. Right, so if you see here, I have used the Surefire plugin, I have used the dependencies, and in the app test.java. So in this app.java, you have the actual source code, for example, for actual Java development, and in the app test, you have the test code or the automation code, which will test the one which is in the main folder. Right, so these all things are by default, but what I've done is, by default there is only one test app method, so I've added two methods, and I've just put some print statements so that we know that the tests are also running. Now this is the pom.xml we have seen, right? So let us run the command. So I'm on a folder where I'm inside a folder where there is a pom.xml file, right? Pom.xml file. So here if I do ls or dir, I will should be able to see the pom.xml file. Now what command I need to run? Mvn clean test. Right, so when it tests, basically it will execute all the earlier phases also. So it will clean, it will compile, and it will test. Right, so now we have seen the test. See, the test phase is running, so tests are running. So let me just go here, and yeah, so target folder automatically created. Now let us see first what is there inside the individual folder. So classes, and now you see the app.class is here, and Maven status. So Maven compiler plugin, all the list of Java class files here. Sure, test classes. Yeah. So yeah, this is where I was thinking. So now you have, earlier in the compile phase, it has just compiled whatever is there in the main folder. But now when you say mvn clean test, that means it will also compile whatever there in the test folder for running the unit tests. So that is what we have seen, apptest.java and apptest.class. Now this class was run, and the test which was there here was also run, and that's why this test app 2 was run, and that is why we will see this output on the console. Now Surefire reports. So we have Surefire reports folder where you can open this XML and you can see the execution report, how many tests were executed and passed and failed, those kind of things. Right. Now let us see this logs. Right. So now tests were run. So it has run the app test dot the class file, and it has printed this inside test app. So yeah, inside test app and inside test app 2. Right. So this is how you run when you run the test phase. This is how you run the test phase, and it will run the unit test, and you can achieve whatever you want. So the unit testing here. Okay, remember, so this test should not require the code to be packaged or deployed. So yeah, so now if you see here, there is no extra jar file which was created here. Okay, so nothing was packaged here. So it has actually just tested the code which is in the main, or if it is automation, then it will go and launch the Selenium the Chrome browser and do Selenium related actions anyway. Okay, fine. Now package phase. Package phase takes it take the compiled code and package it in its distributable format such as jar or var or pom.xml file and so on. So this is where if you want to transfer your code to your colleagues, or somebody wants to, so you check in your code into some repository and somebody wants to refer to it. So that is where the packaging comes into picture. So it will take the compiled code and package it. So let us see this package. It's Mvn Clean package. So I'm using this particular folder where the original project is there. I have added the Surefire and JUnit dependency, and I need to add Maven Jar plugin. So this plugin is helpful here. So plugin is something, this Maven Jar plugin is something which will help me to package this particular project into a jar. Okay, Maven Jar plugin will help me to package this particular project into a jar file. Right now we will see the jar file is created inside the target folder, and we will see one option here how to pass the parameter here. So now let us see mvn clean package. Now I need to use this command, and I'll explain what is this command. So 4 number, right? Now this is the folder where I'll execute the package command. Now you see here we have Surefire plugin which will help to uh, run the project, run the test, the Maven Jar plugin. So this is where this is the plugin. If you just copy this and put it in your pom.xml, and then let the Maven download the plugin related code in backend. So so using this plugin, you can uh, package it. You can package the entire project into a jar file. Now you see, as usual, there's src and simple folder structure here. There is no target folder as of now created, and yeah, so I need to use this plugin, right? So let me run this command on a folder where there is a pom.xml file. Right now, what is this fresh folder? Now what happens is, by default, when this package is run, mvn clean package, it will create a jar file of this project entirely. Why jar file? Because you specified the packaging as jar here. So it will create a jar file and it will just copy it in the same folder wherever your pom.xml is there. But that may not be the case always. So you would want that that jar file or that packaged jar file should be available at a specific folder. So I'm giving this as a configuration here, fresh folder, and the path of the fresh folder I'm passing from the command line. So mvn clean package minus d fresh folder and some random folder name. So if you see, what will happen is, once it is packaged, it will create a folder under this e-commerce folder. Okay, case for e-commerce, and then folder name is test12345. Inside that folder, it will copy the jar file of this project. Okay, so let us just run it. So we will observe this print statement, building jar, whatever this thing, snapshot.jar. Okay, so that same thing we should observe. Okay, so it is running some unit test, and yeah, so building jar, and it has built it here in the test12345 folder, right? So that is where your jar file will be observed, right? So you see, target folder was not there, it was created, and all your classes and all the things are there, and it has created automatically a folder, and in that folder it has copied the jar file. So this is how you use the jar plugin, right? Right, so you use the jar plugin and then you use the package phase. Okay, package phase. Right, now install. So slightly different thing than the package. So it installs the package into a local repository for use as a dependency in other project locally. Now consider that you have a big project, so you have like master slave project or parent child project. Now you what you do is you compile all your child projects and put it in a repository, and your parent project or the master project will actually use the child projects. Now this child project may be proprietary for your particular organization and may not be available to others. So that is what is the difference. So package will basically simply package it and copy it to some folder, but then install will actually uh, install the package into a repository. So that repository can be used on your system locally, or it can be used uh, as a dependency uh, in all the for all the people inside your organization, right? So but not for the outside world. So that is where the install thing is important. Now what is install? So let us see. Mvn clean install. So again, I'm using this Java 5, using JUnit and Surefire plugin. Then I will be, so obviously it will create a jar file and it will install it. So it will say installing some jar file. So two formats are there, as a jar or as a pom. So let us see this, and I'll also come to this Mvn clean skip tests also. So install. Now install is in the case 5 folder. Right, so I'm using this plugin and I'm using JUnit. There's no target folder as of now here, right? So open a terminal and use this command. Right, so now what it said, it has created build a jar file, so packaged it. So remember why it is packaged? Why? Because in the Maven, uh, as we discussed here, this phases will be executed sequentially. So even if you say package, the validate, compile, test will be anyway will be done and it will be packaged. When you say install, it will verify, it will do all the stages and it will do install. So that's how it works in Maven, right? So install, right? So it has built the jar file in the target folder. So if you see target folder is created, there's a jar file here, and now it is installing that jar file in a repository. So where is the repository? So there is a local repository here into a folder called as C users whatever name dot m2 repository and com.flipkart qa and this particular path. So there are two flavors here, as a jar file and as a pom file. Now once it is installed in your local, then if you want to refer this into any other project or a fresh project in your system, then this is a ready-made. So this is as simple as that. If you're referring to any third party dependency, so this is your own dependency, as simple as that, except that it is not available to anyone else outside your company or outside your system. Right, so that file is copied. Right, so we have seen installing jar, installing pom. Right, so mvn clean deploy, this is important from the CI/CD perspective. Now what happens is, we so in the install phase we have installed that in a particular repository. Now there are certain tools available wherein you can install, you can copy your jar files as a jar or as a pom into that tool itself. So there's a tool called as Nexus, or there's a tool called as Maven, uh, uh, Maven's own plugin. So using that plugin, we can upload this particular jar file, or technically also called as artifact, into that particular uh, external environment, so our external repository. So we need to set up, technically we need to have this Nexus or any other repository login details, their URL, username and password, and then we can deploy, right? So you need to have JUnit and other thing. Then you need to add Nexus staging Maven plugin, or we have other plugin called as Maven deploy plugin. And then we need to set up the Nexus or artifact repository. So Nexus is a bit famous, but nowadays there are other artifactories also, artifact related tools also, which are open source or paid one. So Nexus here, and so we will use the command Mvn Clean Deploy in the case 6. Right. So yeah, so that plugin we need to use here. So if you see this plugin section, so I have this, I need to use this plugin and use this parameters like execution, default, deploy, phase and goals and all. So and I'll also need to specify the Nexus repository details. So unfortunately, as of now, I am not running any Nexus here, but this is how you specify when you want to use this deploy. And now there's no target folder created. So what I'll do, terminal and deploy, Mvn clean deploy. So deploy will do install, deploy will do packaging and unit testing and many other things. It has done unit test here. Then it has built the, it has built the jar file. Then it is installing it to a local repository, and then it is deploying. So deploying this particular URL is incorrect. It is not, it does not exist locally on my system. So this deploy phase has failed, but anyway it has failed because of incorrect URL and incorrect credentials. But that is how deploy happens. Okay, now so deploy one. Now let us see this other part here. So skip test, yeah, skip test. So now if you see install phase, right? So now phase 5, so install phase, let us see this PPT. Install. So when you do install, what happens is this compile, test, package, these calls will, these phases will anyway get executed. Now what happens is you have done the unit testing separately using the test one, and you're kind of happy with this particular build. Now when you want to install it, or when you want to deploy it, you may not want to run the test again because you've already done it separately. So that is why this option called as skip test. So when you say skip test, that time that the test phase will not be executed, it will be skipped, and other phases will be executed, and it will be packaged or installed, it will be deployed. So whatever next phase, so you're just skipping this test phase. That is why uh, skip test option. So let us run this. So case 5, right? So case 5. Now let this target folder be there. So what we will do, I'll open another terminal here and paste. So the moment I say install, that means it will actually run the clean phase also. When you say clean, the contents of the target folder will be cleaned up and it will be again recompiled. So you will see this folder will be gone for us for a moment, and it will be, the all file will be compiled and the latest file will be available here. And when I say skip test, that means the test section will be skipped, so you will not be able to see this prints itself, right? So mvn clean install -d skip tests, right? So the contents were gone, it will be again available because it is recompiled. And let me just go here and reload. So now you see it has compiled the tests classes anyway, but it has not run the test phase. Okay, so the prints for the tests are not observed here. Okay, this prints, this tests are not observed because that phase was skipped, right? And other things has happened, right? So this is about mvn skip tests of this one. Yeah, now let us see some other points. To run pom.xml from a specific folder. Okay, so this is about hands-on. Now yeah, so -d, so few options here, minus capital D, we have seen minus capital D skip test here. skip test minus D is here and minus D here. So what is this minus D? So minus D is to define a system property. So yeah, so if you want to specify some parameters externally when you are running the Maven command, that time you can use the system property using minus capital D. For example, minus capital D skip test to skip the unit test during the install phase. Now minus F option is there. There are many other options, but minus these are the some simply and commonly used options. So minus F to run a specific pom.xml file. Right. Now let us say this example. Now if you see, I have in the IntelliJ the tool, or even in Eclipse tool, I have not opened the e-commerce project, e-commerce folder where the pom.xml is present, but I have opened the parent folder. Now sometimes it might be the case that you have opened some other folder and you want to execute a project, a Maven based project. Now obviously under this folder, under this case 7, there is no pom.xml. So now you want to execute a specific uh, Maven project which has a pom.xml. So that is basically executing a project which has it is not a standard folder structure, but it is a different folder structure. So how you can execute another project itself from any other folder? So that is what is the problem here, to run pom.xml from a specific folder. So from some other folder, you want to execute some XML file or the project file. So this is how you do it. So Maven mvn minus f and the path of your other pom.xml file and clean test or clean compile or package deploy anything. This is helpful when you have like multiple projects. So you have a parent project and child projects, or master slave project. So this is where these things are helpful, right? So this command, and I can give it from any particular folder, right? So now one point to note here is the file name pom.xml is actually changed. It might be abcd.xml. It can be any name, but the extension should be .xml. Now the moment I do this, it will actually compile, start opening this file, and it will see what is the internal content, and it will compile it just like a normal Maven based project. But only difference is now you are doing it remotely, right? So if I click here, you see there will be target folder will be created. Yeah, target is created, and again the same test classes and the same structure is available. Yeah, so now so the command which I have run was mvn whatever and clean test. So it has cleaned the project and it has run the test. So test, if you see the test which are here, like inside test tab 2, so that is what is appearing here, right? So this is how you execute another project from your folder, or any folder, to run project with specific profile, right? So what is profile? Let us see profile, right? So now I have opened a separate project, case 8. Now what is profile? So consider a scenario where you are running the code is running maybe on your SRT environment or local environment, and the same code is probably running on a production environment. Now obviously for different environments you will have a different database structure, and obviously the username and password will be different for different uh, environments. So how can that be managed? So that can be managed, one of the way it can be managed using profile. So what you do is you create a config.conf or any properties file, abc.properties file, under the test and resources section. Okay, we have a folder called as resources. So just right click and create a folder called as resources. Inside that, create a properties file. So as I said earlier, in the resources folder, you will have the resources required for processing this particular project. For example, properties file, XML file, JSON file, any config file or Excel file. So any kind of a external or images or CSS and many other things, that will be under the resources section. Now in the resources, you create a file, and in that configuration properties file, you create two variables. Okay, so it's properties file. So we have a key value pair structure, and then you just specify like this. Okay, now what we will do, we will use something called as a profile here, and in the profile, uh, okay, build section. Okay, we'll come to build section. So we'll create something called as profile. So profile section, we'll create multiple profiles. So if you see here, SIT profile and production profile. So production profile, I will create in the profile section, production profile section, I will create a property, DB username and DB password, and I'll give some the specific username and password for that particular properties. Yeah, config.properties. So this prop1.db user value will be copied, will be referred from here. Now there are two profiles here. If you see, uh, production profile and SIT profile. So every profile has different parameter set. So database username is different, database username is specific, password is different. So this is just one example of having uh, different properties in profile. But let us see the other one. Yeah, so now let us see this one. I've just commented it out, but now I have a profile called as Windows and a profile called as Linux, right? So profiles and profile and one profile. So for Windows, I have to go for this particular version or this particular path, and for Linux, the path will be, Linux fashion. So that is how I can have different profile for Windows or Linux. Now another profile could be this one. Another profile could be this one. For example, sanity test is one profile and smoke test is another profile. So for every profile, I can use different parameter set. For example, I will be using, if it is a testng project, then I'll be using, instead of pom.xml, let's say sanity xml, and for smoke, I'll be using smoke xml. Okay, and maybe some other specific parameters. So that is how we can go for profile. So we can have different parameters and values and many things in a separate profile. Now find that we have created profile. Now how to use it? Like when you execute this Maven project, um, you want to specify, let's say, either SIT profile or a production profile or a default profile or whatever. So how to do that? So we have this option called as -p. -p is for specific profile. So for now, let's say I will go with this particular option, Mvn clean test -P production. So now I want to execute something for a production profile. So this is the production profile. Now to use these parameters in your Java code, I have used this simple code here. So I'm using resources. I'm getting the resources, this configuration properties file, and I'm reading the strings in a text. Okay, it's a simple code. Now let us run this. So now it will refer to the production profiles, username and password. Right. So if you see, this DB user DB password is coming from a production profile. So this is your production profile. Yeah, this is a production profile, and this is the username and password. Okay, so this is a simple example for profiles. Same thing, you can have Windows profile or a Linux profile and many other things. Right. So now we can have other options like -q. So it is for quiet output, or very less lines will be printed in the output. -x is a debug output. So if you want to run in a debug mode, like a lot of print statement will be there. For better debugging or understanding, you can go for debug option, -x, -X. So this is a very high level introduction and some hands-on on Maven base project, and how to create project, how to run different phases and commands. So I hope this is a bit clear. So let us see a fresh topic in the subsequent session. Thank you. Yeah, one more thing is there is about uh, yeah. So one more thing here is proxy setting. Now consider that you are using the Maven in your organization and there is a firewall. So how do you bypass the firewall? Is in your C user, whatever username, M2 folder, you create an XML file called as settings.xml, and in the settings.xml this will be the structure. There you specify the proxy and you specify, let's say, username, password, hostname, port. So then, this is how the network firewall will be cleared, and your uh, uh, I mean the firewall related or dependent file not able to download, the jar file not able to download, that issue will be resolved. This is one point. And yeah, last topic is this Maven master slave project. Although it may not be required, but just an introduction. So consider that you have a big project, so you have multiple child projects, and then you have a parent project or a master project. So what you need to do, you need to Maven clean install your child project, so that the jar file of that particular projects will be available in your local or remote repository. So this is the pomxml for your child project. Now once it is installed, the jar file is available, then you can use this in the parent. So in the parent project pom.xml, you specify the dependencies of your child project. So let's say my child, my another child, and so on. Now remember, just like any other dependency, this also jar file, it will check it locally. So then you execute this particular set of commands, and then your parent project will get the dependencies of the child project, which are available in your repository here, in your local repository. So yeah, that's all about the Maven introduction, hands-on, and lot of small topics. So let us see the other part in the subsequent session. Thank you.